What's going on, everybody? Anthony Cervino here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel with my top players to buy, sell, or hold entering Week 6. We got a couple of marquee wide receivers upcoming, so let's get started with Chase Brown at the running back position. And Chase Brown has been coming on of late. And we also have to note that Zach Moss could be dealing with an ankle injury, which we have to monitor. But whether Moss is in or out of the lineup, we're seeing the emergence of Chase Brown. Now, it was a slow start for Chase Brown. Many of us this offseason were drafting him like he'd be the guy. Instead, it has been dominated by Zach Moss early, but past two games, we're seeing Chase Brown go for at least 14.4 PPR points with a season-high 23.2 in Week 4. And he's getting the touches. He's had at least 15 touches in back-to-back games, scoring 3 total touchdowns in that period. When it comes to a receiver out of the backfield, we have now seen Chase Brown garner 3 targets in all but one game this year. In fact, he's being targeted 36.4% on routes he is running, which is 97th percentile at the running back position using the tools and metrics here at RotoWire.com. Chase Brown is also running efficiently, 74% yards after contact and 4 average yards after contact. Chase Brown getting it done at every level, and he's a player I would look to buy. If you look at the upcoming schedule, a couple of tough matchups against the Giants and the Browns, then it opens up Philly, Vegas. The playoff schedule's solid for Chase Brown, and this Cincy offense, it's firing on all cylinders. Their defense is not great, which means they're going to have to throw the ball to stay in and to win football games, which means possibly even more target volume and opportunities to score for Chase Brown. Let's go to another buy low. George Pickens. George Pickens last week, he was one of my starts of the week, and he fell on his face against the Dallas Cowboys. However, in 3 out of the 5 games this year, we've seen sparks from George Pickens, at least 10.7 PPR points in those 3 outings. He's also getting targeted at least 7 times in all but one game. So what's going on with George Pickens? Why haven't we seen the big spike week? Well, he has yet to score a touchdown, but he is being targeted as the guy. There's really nobody else Justin Fields looks to. In fact, George Pickens, 27.9% of the team targets, and he's being targeted on 30.5% of the routes he is running. His ADOT's also outstanding, 2.63, which is 92nd percentile. Here's why we're buying George Pickens. I get it. People are panicking. The Steelers' offense is inconsistent. They couldn't get out of their own way against Dallas, which was a defense we saw the Saints expose back in Week 2. Some of the upcoming matchups, Vegas, Jets, Giants, top 15 against enemy wide receivers. But coming out of the bye week, the floodgates open. Washington, Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincy, Cleveland, Philly, Baltimore. All of those matchups are outstanding for George Pickens. All of those teams can be gashed by enemy wide receivers in fantasy. So this is a situation where fantasy managers of George Pickens, they want to get out from under it. They don't want to deal with him anymore. He's a headache. They don't know when to start him. They don't know when to sit him. And they'll probably look to off George Pickens at an aggressive discount. And now's the time to buy and get ahead of the market. You might have to sit him on your bench for a few weeks, but the target is to pick him up now and use him maybe in week 8 against the Giants, but really to use him coming out of the Week 9 bye, starting in Week 10 against Washington, because we could see George Pickens become a fantasy football league winner down the stretch. Let's go to a marquee receiver we're buying low on. CeeDee Lamb, and I get it. CeeDee Lamb, we're never going to truly buy low on a player like CeeDee Lamb. It's going to cost you something to get him. But his value is probably at an all-time low for this season. He's gotten off to a slow start. You got to remember, CeeDee Lamb was a top 3 pick in fantasy drafts. But what do we know about CeeDee Lamb? CeeDee Lamb normally starts slow. Even last year, where CeeDee Lamb was possibly and arguably the most prolific fantasy football receiver out there, from weeks 1 to 6, CeeDee Lamb only had one game over 20 fantasy points. The other 5 games, he was under 18 and under 14. And then the floodgates opened after the week 7 bye in week 8, and CeeDee Lamb finished the season as the league winner. Now looking at this year, he's getting off to another slow start. One game over 20 PPR points, the rest of them, the other 4, under 19, under 13. Fantasy managers who have Lamb, I drafted him to be this prolific guy, and he's not returning value. I think it begins this week. The Detroit Lions are the second easiest matchups for enemy receivers, and then coming out of the bye week, a little bit tougher against San Francisco, but another player where the schedule opens up, starting in week 9 with the Falcons, Philly, Houston, who you can throw on, Washington. In fact, they get Washington twice, they get Philly twice. A lot of easy matchups to end the season. And we also know Dallas is a pass-first offense. It's not close. There's a lot of volume to go around, and CeeDee Lamb is going to get it. Right now, he's only getting 21.7% of the team targets, which is lower than where he was last year, but he's still being targeted on 28.9% of his routes and a 2.66 average yards per route run, which is still 93rd percentile amongst wide receivers. With this upcoming schedule for CeeDee Lamb, if you ever wanted to buy CeeDee Lamb at a slight discount, it is now. And remember, if you like content like this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the alert icon so you can be notified anytime we go live to answer your questions or drop outstanding content just like this. And if you have any start-sit questions, waiver questions, trade questions, ask them in the comment section below. Myself or one of the outstanding members of this RotoWire team will get back to you as soon as we can. Now, let's get into some of my players to sell. Marvin Harrison Jr. It looks like Marvin Harrison Jr. might take a backseat to Malik Neighbors when it comes to fantasy football as who the number 1 rookie will be. He could even take a back seat to Brian Thomas with the way he's playing. Marvin Harrison gave us that one monster outing in week 2, and he has yet to do anything close to that. In fact, he's played in 5 games. In 2 of those games, he finished with under 5.6 PPR points, most recently last week against the 49ers. And I don't love this schedule, right? Green Bay is nice this week. But after Green Bay, Chargers, Miami, Chicago, Jets, Seattle, all of those teams are top 11 difficult teams when it comes to fantasy scoring against wide receivers. And outside of Seattle, the other 4 teams I just named are in the top 7. This is a gauntlet of bad matchups for Marvin Harrison, and the time to sell is now. And the playoff schedule isn't bad, but if you have Marvin Harrison, you still need to get to the playoffs to use him. And if you're not sitting in a good spot, I would try to flip Marvin Harrison, get an upgrade at another position while you still can, because it could be a really, really tough run for the next 5 weeks. Let's go to another guy we should sell high on now, and that's Rhamndre Steveson. Rhamondre Stevenson, all but 1 game, he's delivered double-digit PPR points in 3 out of those 5 games. He has given us 17, 19, 21. He's getting volume. He's scoring touchdowns. He has 3 on the year and one of the worst offenses in the NFL. He's running well, a 24.7% broken tackle rate, a 3.4 average yards after contact. He's getting 18 touches per game. He's even getting 12.7% of the team targets. He's being targeted at least 4 times in 3 out of his past 4 games. So why are we selling Rhamndre Steveson? Because at any point, Rhamondre Stevenson's in danger of losing his job. We know this past week, Rhamondre was benched for Antonio Gibson. But they did say, if you read it between the lines, that he was going to play significantly, and he did. Rhamondre salvaged his job for now, did not fumble, and had a nice game. When it comes to the upcoming matchups, they're okay. They're certainly exploitable. But we also know that Rhamondre Stevenson's the type of player, because the offense he's on could get phased out of the game, like what happened against the Jets in week 3. We also know that Rhamondre Stevenson, in the first 4 games of the year, fumbled in every one of them. And then in weeks 3 and 4, he lost his fumbles, which is why he was in danger of losing his job altogether last week. We're selling high on Rhamondre Stevenson because at any point, it could happen against Houston, it could happen against Jacksonville, it could happen against the Jets in the next couple of weeks. If he puts one more ball on the ground, we are more than likely going to see Antonio Gibson possibly take over. I don't want to say he's going to fully take over the starting job, but I think we could see a 50-50 workload split. This is the NFL. And if you put the ball on the ground, you're going to eventually lose your job. Go ask Ronald Jones that. Let's go to my 2 players we are holding, and that's Breece Hall. And if you go into the shorts section of the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube channel, I do a panic meter video. And Breece Hall is a player I am panicking on, but it doesn't mean I'm selling him. In fact, I might want to buy him, but I'm certainly holding him if I'm a Breece Hall fantasy manager. He started the year outstanding, over 18 PPR points in the first 3 games. Past 2 weeks, under 6.7. He's been under 35 yards rushing in the past 2 games. He's only had a total of 9 targets, a total of 5 receptions, and 28 yards in the past 2 games. So there's no PPR floor either. He's also had a really tough gauntlet of matchups in the past 2 games. Denver and Minnesota, both the number 10 and number 2 teams when it comes to shutting down enemy fantasy running backs. The upcoming schedule is pretty good. It opens up Buffalo 31st. Pittsburgh's going to be tough. New England, Houston's going to be tough. But if we look at that week 10 to week 17 schedule, they are all smash spots for Breece Hall. You got to be patient. Breece Hall was a number 2 fantasy back last year with Zach Wilson. It's going to get better for Aaron Rodgers, and it's going to get better for the Jets. They just fired their head coach. This could rally the team. And what if they bring in Davante Adams? Davante Adams unlocks this entire offense. I'm holding on to Breece Hall. Let's go to one more running back I'm holding on. That's DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, after a terrible start, everybody thought he was going to lose his job to Roschon. Well, Roschon is getting some goal line work, but DeAndre Swift in the past 2 games, he's gone off for 285 yards, a couple of touchdowns. He looks electric. He looks elusive. He's getting it done. 77% yards after contact, 95th percentile. He's operating as one of the best running backs in football in the past 2 games. And guess what? His schedule, Jacksonville, Washington, Arizona. More smash spots for DeAndre Swift. Now, it gets more difficult afterwards. So my strategy with DeAndre Swift is to hold him. Hold DeAndre Swift, because he has a couple of more games where he can smash and really build his fantasy value. They're good, really good matchups. But down the stretch, in the fantasy playoffs especially, we could see DeAndre Swift come back down to earth. So instead of selling high now, wait couple more weeks. Let's get him to have 1 more or 2 more games over 18, 20 PPR points. Then we sell DeAndre Swift at max value, right? Before he hits a gauntlet of bad matchups. And you can improve your team at another position, get another running back, maybe get a running back with a better playoff schedule. And that's how we're handling DeAndre Swift.